And lastly, before we dive in, I wanted to mention that there is a huge variety of talks prepared for this and new series that are coming out. One in particular is called Working in the US, Career Development for International Physicists, that had just launched in July. So you can check out and keep in touch with that if you look at Google our webinar engaging sign up for our mailing list. And so with that, I will introduce our wonderful speaker. So first, we have Dr. Jess Wade, is an Imperial College Research Fellow working on new materials for optoelectronic devices with a focus on chiral organic semiconductors. Outside of the lab, Jess is involved in several science communication and outreach initiatives, including writing a children's book about nanotechnology. She's committed to improving diversity in science, both online and offline. Next, we have Dr. Jessica Esquivel. She's an associate scientist at Fermilab, where she works on muon G2 experiment. She's one of the 100 Black women with PhDs in physics in the US and the third Black woman to hold an associate science position at Fermilab. She's a recognized advocate for creating just and equitable spaces in physics and focuses on intersections of race, gender, sexuality in her community engagement efforts. Caprice Phillips, is a rising third-year PhD student in astronomy department at The Ohio State University. She is the lead organizer of Black in Astro movement, and Caprice has worked as a museum, for the National Park Services at night skies to engage park visitors. She enjoys utilizing Twitter and other social media outlets to engage with the public and the occasional science communication. Christine Roberts is the Public Affairs Director at the National High Magnetic Field Laboratory, where she oversees a team that develops unique video, media, graphic, web, and social media content for diverse audiences about magnetic fields. She has collaborated with Disney Imagineer and Florida State University to create hands-on exhibits on virtual reality experience about magnetic fields. And finally, but not least, Dr. Claudia Antolini is a professional in public engagement with an expertise in physics and astronomy. She promotes physics research to a wider audience and supports researchers in developing communication skills to make their work more relatable. She wants to show that physics can empower people and open doors, whereas historically it has propagated the idea that only a very few people can succeed. So with that, I will give the stage to our panelists today, and we can start with Dr. Jess Wade. She will give a few minutes of talk about what her work is.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for the introduction. It's a thrill to be on this panel with so many people who I really respect and have yet to meet in real life, even though engaging so much with each other online. My name is Jess. As mentioned, I'm a research fellow at Imperial, and I study new materials for optoelectronic and spintronic devices. I kind of became interested in advocacy and equity issues, particularly during my undergrad degree, when you suddenly look around you as a physicist and you realize the majority of people in the room, well, the vast majority are white and the majority of them are men. And I think I started doing like a little bit of public engagement then. Obviously, it wasn't so much in line. It was a while ago, so we were allowed to do things in person. I then became really interested in how I could take the public engagement that I was doing and the outreach with kind of high school students and their teachers and parents somewhere bigger. So how you could take what you're doing in this classroom or this lecture theatre and take it out to more people, because ultimately that's what we want to do, right? We want to tell the stories of physics, of our research, but also communicate it with a really big audience, because I wanted to change that terrible diversity that I was seeing in my physics lecture theatres. And so I started doing more and more online. I got really, really into editing Wikipedia, which you may or may not know about. It's a bit of a passion of mine. Wikipedia is obviously a democratized platform for sharing knowledge. It's the biggest encyclopedia in the world. It's accessed by about 15 billion people every single month. So from a science communication perspective, we have this incredible opportunity to speak about physics and physicists and where people are studying physics and the history of physics. But actually topics that I particularly cared about were really underrepresented on Wikipedia: women scientists, Black physicists, Black engineers, LGBTQ plus engineers and scientists. So since I learned that and I decided to go a little bit more online with that advocacy that I was doing, I've started editing Wikipedia in a really big way and also teaching other people how to edit Wikipedia to try and improve the quality of content about science and about scientists. And since the beginning of 2018, I've been writing Wikipedia biographies every single day, and I haven't stopped of women and of people of color and of LGBTQ plus or other historically marginalized scientists and engineers. I'm at over 1,400 now. So I just got there this week, which is so cool for me to celebrate at home on my own. Great pandemic. But really, so Wikipedia has become this kind of platform for me to share these stories and then have this interaction with people who read the pages and the people who the pages are about if they're still alive. So that's been extraordinary. Very briefly, before we move over to the other fantastic panelists, I've also, as mentioned so kindly in the introduction, I got the opportunity to write a children's book around nanoscience. And obviously children's science books aren't anything particularly new, but this one we've really had the opportunity, me and the amazing illustrator Melissa Castrillon have had the opportunity to do in public engagement in a way that I never thought we would have to do, because I didn't expect a pandemic to happen when the book came out. But we've been doing kind of online workshops with families and their children around nanoscience. She's a beautiful, beautiful award-winning illustrator. So she's had kind of, and we can talk about creative ways to do this later on, but she's had a visualizer that is visualizing her hand as she draws. And we've drawn out atomic structures and how atoms arrange into materials and how materials give rise to cool functions and how we can overcome things like climate change by designing better materials. We actually had a group of kids build carbon nanotubes out of kind of colored paper and scissors and tape. And we've been able to do that entirely because we've been online. So we've been able to kind of access communities we wouldn't have been able to otherwise. We've been able to provide really fantastic, cheap, low cost resource, cheap and low cost are the same thing, cheap but high quality resources. And yeah, it's been really brilliant to try and think a little bit more creatively about how we can do that. So any questions about Wikipedia? I also like Twitter, but I know others will speak much more eloquently on that than I. And then also on kind of family engagement and communities online, I'm happy to try and field. But back to my distinguished panelists.
All right, and continuing with the Jessica theme, Jessica Esquivel.
Hi, everybody. I didn't prepare remarks, so I'm coming in off the cuff. Okay, I guess I want to kind of just caveat that I am an introvert when it comes to social interactions. And it was after I realized the low representation of Black women in physics that I realized that I needed to kind of get over that and be visible in this space, because there was a myth that we didn't exist, or I hate using this term, but that we were unicorns. And it was that, I guess, push that really did propel me into this idea of community engagement and science communication. So with that caveat, a lot of the work that I do is culturally based. It is in dispelling the myth of what a scientist looks like, dispelling the myth of who can do physics, who can do science. And that's mainly a lot of the community engagement work that I do. And I really do focus on being authentic and being vulnerable in the issues that I faced going through this journey, and the barriers that I've come across, external and internal, to get to where I am. And I think it's because of my vulnerability and because of my authenticity that I've been fortunate enough to get opportunities like becoming a AAAS If Then ambassador, which focuses on increasing representation of women in STEM, focusing on middle school girls. And it's really innovative, I think, in its approach, because it takes this talent agency model where it puts us, women in STEM, in very highly visible spaces where middle school girls consume their content. So social media, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter is more for like us oldies, by the way. So I've had to learn a lot of different platforms to engage with, you know, the community that I want to, and it, from the ambassadorship, from, you know, the tweets about life as a physicist, I've also gotten opportunities to be on a show called Mission Unstoppable. And I thought that was really interesting to kind of completely rethink how I talk about physics, because I was specifically for middle school girls, and rethink how I can infuse, you know, physics principles in a very different way. So my episode was on the physics of makeup. I really like makeup. I cosplay on the side. So, you know, I was able to talk about the optical properties of makeup, the weirdness of mica, and how that's in all of most of the makeup that we use today. And on the other end of the spectrum, I also had the opportunity to be a subject matter expert on the science channels, How the Universe Works. So that's very, you know, science heavy. And I think it was really fun to have this spread of science communication and the spread of community engagement, and really learn how to shift and you know, transform, I guess, the way you communicate to the general audience, and really solidified the fact that you need to focus on your audience, and prepare and shift your message to appeal to the people that you're actually trying to get in, you know, engage with. Yeah, I'm gonna stop talking. If y'all have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you for being honest about introverts, because I am an introvert as well, and I also struggle a lot, but I also been put in a position where I do need to, it's a learning process. So Introverts United too. Caprice, now please take the stage.
Okay, hi everyone. So my name's Caprice. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. As Claudia said, like I'm a grad student at the Ohio State University. I work on seeing we can detect certain potential biosignatures in the atmospheres of these interesting type of planets. So I have just like 3 slides. Is it okay if I share my screen, Claudia? Okay. It's just a little PowerPoint. Does everyone see the slides? Okay, cool. Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about, I'm just disclaimer, I'm an introvert as well. I'm such a big introvert, but I like recently I made a Twitter account and I didn't use it for a few years. And then as I was like starting graduate school and stuff, like I started like getting more like into Twitter and different things. And I really enjoyed Twitter, but I kind of use it when I'm not just ranting about things, I use it as a form to like communicate about like the work that I'm doing, but I try to make it like fun and interesting, well, to the best of my ability. So in astronomy, and I'm sure like in other fields, there's this thing called the archive where you can like put papers on there, like before or after they're published. And so like people call it paper day or something. And so like just kind of like some things that like I've done is like people make threads about the work that they do like from their papers. And I'm a huge GIF or GIF, however you want to say it. I'm a huge GIF user, and I always try to put, this is kind of a screenshot on the right here, that famous GIF of the dude like what's going on. And so I try to like have like really fun things like that, like in my like engagement type of thing, just to make it fun for people, because it's fun for me. So I just assume hopefully it'll be fun for other people. So those are just like some of the ways that I've been trying to use like social media. I feel like I'm still like a noob like at it. Is Jessica saying like I don't understand TikTok or Snapchat, like for the life of me I cannot figure it out. But so I use like Twitter and like Instagram, like for example, like I try to make like just things that like I observed like while I was like TAing. We were playing with diffraction gratings and different things like that. And so I like took a picture like through it and like put it like on my public Instagram. And then when there was a total solar eclipse, those little like kind of like half moon like kind of eclipse little things, I forgot the name of it, but like just like seeing that like things like out and like nature that like people could like seeing and like doing work like as a night sky's assistant. Like I work for like the National Park Service and like museum educator. Like I like telling people like about that, because it's very different. I think like working, because it's kind of like they're like, oh, if you like understand something you can like explain it to kids or something. So like working with like kids and like trying to communicate like Jessica was saying, like science to like people that like study it like for a living, is like can be two like different things. So I'm shy, like I'm trying to get better about it, but I can be really shy when it comes to that, because I'm like can be so afraid of like making a mistake. But everybody's perfect. No one's perfect, like type of thing. So I try to keep that in mind, like when I post things. And then like the last thing I just wanted to talk about is as Claudia mentioned, I'm one of the organizers for Black and Astro, which was founded by Ashley Walker. And so just kind of using social media to like, I found so many other like Black and Astro members, like through like we just had our Black and Astro week last month, and I've like discovered like so many new Black and Astro members like through Twitter, like all the aerospace people who are brilliant. And so like just like using those like hashtags that Ashley like came up with like for the roll call for people to introduce themselves, is like a great way to like find people like and engage with people like as well. And then I worked with Ashley on like the left here, Ashley and like Cheyenne, like we use like we took over like the SETI accounts like on Twitter and like Instagram. We had like little Instagram live like discussion, like just talking about Black and Astro and talking about like our research and stuff. Like that was like a really cool way to like engage with people. And like, as Jessica saying, like there's this thing that like we're unicorns or something, and we're not. There's like quite a few of us out here. The numbers are small, but we're here and we're growing. So just to like show people that like we are visible and different things like that is like part of the reason that I like being like engaged on social media, even though it terrifies me a lot of the times. It's kind of like you have to do things like outside of your comfort zone type of thing. So that's just kind of the brief thing that I wanted to, I'll stop sharing my screen. But the brief thing that I just wanted to talk about as far as like myself and like how I've been using social media. I try to make it fun. So, but yeah, thank you.
And Kristen, and thank you, Caprice. I actually relate to some of those pictures because I post them the same with the filters and the lights. So
Yeah, such beautiful Instagram content. Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Roberts. I'm just going to share my screen too, but I promise don't be afraid if you're like, oh my gosh, she has all these slides. This is what I do. I'm going to go through them super quickly. I'm the Public Affairs Director for the National High Magnetic Field Laboratory, the only magnet lab in the United States and the largest and highest powered magnet lab in the world. I hope some of you have been there to do your research. So unlike the rest of the panel, I am not a scientist. I have built my career in communication and marketing. And so I hope I can share a couple of other, insights that are a little bit different than just doing it personally. I promote the Mag Lab as like a job. And so there's some things that I've learned that I would love to share with you all. This first one is that, of course, the Mag Lab is taxpayer funded, as I'm sure is a lot of your research. And so my philosophy as a regular tax-paying person is that public engagement isn't just sort of a nice thing to do, right? This is a commitment that we should have to share information about our publicly funded research, make it transparent, make it accessible, make sure that there is something there for everybody. This is a little communication pet peeve that I have sometimes with scientists. It's like, oh, I have to like dumb down my research to make it, work for you. And I just want to remind you, like your public audience isn't dumb, right? They're not experts like you are. And they don't know what you know. And, you remember how long it took you to know what you know, right? I tell people this all the time, there are brilliant lawyers and judges and, even people just outside of your scientific discipline who would love to be brought into your scientific story. Let's just erase dumbing down from our vernacular when we talk about public outreach and public engagement. And remember, your audience is not dumb. Okay. And I heard someone mention this, so I actually pulled this slide into this slide deck. This is adapted from the Ivory Tower, and AAAS uses it quite frequently. But this is, a concept of like audience-centric research. Audience-centric communication. So much of science is built around, building the background and then supporting details and then sharing the conclusions at the end. But we really, we want to know the takeaway, so think about kind of meeting your audience where they are, structuring your content a little bit differently. My team does lots of different things, and so I'm not even going to spend a second here, but just know we have a large communications portfolio, as I'm sure most of your host institutions do. So if you're like, I feel so nervous about social media and I don't really know how to do this, like there's probably someone like me where you are, right, who can help amplify your content or, make it a little more comfortable for you to kind of join in the social sphere. We enjoy a really deep engagement with lots of audiences on social. So I just want to remind you, I think that an earlier panelist mentioned that, us old birds are on Facebook and Twitter now, and it's all about TikTok and Instagram, and networks are changing and evolving all the time. But in reality, there is a diverse community on lots of different networks, right? So there's something for everybody here. We love to engage with our core scientist audience on social. So not just the general public, but scientists and users of our facility. People have talked about the K-12 community. Teachers are there. Some industry partners who are, looking for opportunities, legislative funding agencies, lots of audiences there. And just kind of a primer of kind of our accounts. We are most active in Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Instagram, and have a decent engagement rate. And the thing that I'm most proud of is we enjoy almost a 50-50 split of males and females on our Facebook and Twitter accounts. And I'm really, really proud of that, because a lot of scientific organizations like ours see that big gap, right, between their fans that we also see in the sciences themselves. And so we are really intentional about creating content that resonates with people. I'm actually going to include YouTube in the social sphere too. You guys can fight with me if you want, but it is a network where people can share and comment and like. So I'm going to count it as a social network. Bring your feedback into the comments, but YouTube is an increasingly important network for us. We have people lots and lots and lots of people watching content on that channel, particularly weird content. Like this is a music parody video that we made that was very popular. Weird content like, how do you shrink a quarter? That's a weird thing that you do, right? So these things perform very well on YouTube. We've worked with an animator to develop an animated series that also performs super, super well. So yeah, I'm sure you all will talk about this, but like social is not just a nice thing to do. It can benefit you as a researcher, like citations, more social, more citations. We can get into this in conversation. And I'm sure you know more about this than I do, particularly the scientists on the panel. And just some tips from me to you as a communicator and kind of public representative here, you know, connect with people where they are, right? Hop onto hashtags, look to pop culture, use metaphors, analogies, and, you know, remember, fun doesn't have to mean wrong or bad. It can just mean fun. So if I can find stop sharing, I will, and I will pass it over to whoever's next.
Thank you, Christine. I mean, I have tons of questions, some of the things that you already posted, but I'll leave that for the now. So last but not least, there's two Jessicas and there's two Claudias. So Dr. Claudia, jump in.
Well, okay, I am in this really awkward spot to have to speak after everyone else and not think I'm completely fluking everything that I've done so far in my life. So, I mean, this is just to voice my immense admiration for everyone else that is on this panel here today. And this is a point I'm going to come back to. Yes, it's a great t-shirt and I sport it with pride. Because for the people that don't know about this t-shirt, it says "Smash Particles and the Patriarchy." I'm not a particle physicist, so I tend to smash the patriarchy more, which is something that I do mention every now and again on my social media activity as well. So what I do in my day job is I do public engagement with science. What does that mean? Nothing and everything at the same time, because I am doing public engagement with science when I go to the supermarket. An evening a few weeks ago, I was speaking to a clerk and we were discussing Facebook activity and how social media actually mine data for their own purposes. And we were discussing different privacy options for, you know, to look after what we share and how companies might use it and how they might track our activities and so on and so forth. I do public engagement with science when I ask people to tell me, right now I'm just self-isolating because I've received a ping on my COVID app that says I should stay at home. And I've asked people, hey, what are the symptoms that you're checking? And that is public engagement with science. I'm a physicist, but it doesn't mean that what I am discussing is in science all the time. And it doesn't mean that I cannot use and follow exactly the same principles of, you know, as Kirsten was saying, not assuming that your audience is not intelligent, but just that they know a little less about you. And that doesn't put you on a higher level. You have something to share. Like I try to put myself in a position where I have something to share rather than something to teach. And I might know more about someone else, about a certain little topic, but they might know a lot more than I do about whatever else. So that's the mindset with which I approach everything I do. When I was 15, 16, I think that's when I became an activist and a feminist, because I felt like, hey, there's a bunch of things that I don't like about the world, and a few of these seem to have to do with inequality and with the fact that certain people just didn't get a chance in life to do whatever they wanted to be because of how other people saw them. And so I decided, no, I don't like that. And I'm going to do maybe something to try and go in a different direction. So that's when my antennas sort of started going up. And then I found out I wanted to be a scientist. So I pursued an undergraduate degree in physics, and the gender ratio was 1 in 8 at the time. I'm speaking about several moons ago nowadays, but it's not like it has drastically changed, so it's still relevant. Then I went to a master's in astrophysics, then I got a PhD in astrophysics, and I kept seeing the same patterns. I kept seeing the same kind of people doing the same kind of things as a matter of science, but also as a matter of behaviors. I saw people relating to each other in that kind of way. And that's also when I started questioning the fact that I was so lucky that I got to know and study so much about science. And I wondered, is that really fair if everyone doesn't benefit from it? The point that Kirsten was making earlier about opening science to people that pay taxes, because we're learning what we're learning because we receive that kind of funding, and that's super important for sure. In my view, science is a fundamental human endeavor. Science comes from being curious. Every human being at some point or another in their life have felt curiosity. Therefore, everyone can be a scientist. Everyone has that spark in them to ask questions. And that's what science is about. Science is about asking questions. So from that, I started thinking, okay, but so, I'm studying for a PhD. Are people actually benefiting from that? Everyone, regardless of, who is my taxpayer. I work in the UK now, so I would have an obligation to people in the UK that are paying their taxes, but I don't just do science communication and public engagement for them. If I get the chance of reaching another audience, I will, because science should be for everyone. Science is for everyone. So this is my line of thinking. And then I also happen to enjoy it. I happen to really like it. And I'm in a job about this, so I have some skill. I have something to show off for the fact that I enjoy science communication and I'm good at it. And I've started exploring more and more where my two passions come together, which is science and knowing about things, and how society is shaped and who gets those opportunities. So I'm mostly active on Twitter, and what I tend to talk about is either stuff I find extremely exciting about science, or stuff I find extremely interesting from a social perspective, and how these social issues intersect with science. Because we see lots and lots of amazing results coming out every day on scientific papers, but we also see tremendous inequality. We see communities that don't have clean water. We see people going to space just paying out of their own pocket, and at the same time we see vaccination inequity. And those questions should be answered by scientists. We are responsible for the work that we do, not just because we receive money, which of course is vital, but because we're using that knowledge. The way we use that knowledge is important. It all comes down to the same ethics, to the same principles that govern our actions. And I think that in science, we have been given a bit of an excuse to bow out of the ethical conversation, because science is objective, and we agree that it's all rational and there's no emotions involved in that or anything. And I don't particularly agree with that notion. Science is a fundamental human activity. This is what I said earlier. Therefore, comes together with everything else. Everything else that we do should be subjected to that judgment. So that's what I do. The way I personally started on social media is that a friend of mine said, oh, you know what? You should really join Twitter, even just to stay in touch with other people that do the same job as you. And I thought, oh, come on, I'm never going to be good at Twitter. And then I started sharing things. I started talking about the things I enjoy. I started doing silly videos, like somewhere there's a video of me singing Fly Me to the Moon, wearing a flight suit and holding a Lego rocket. And people just liked that. People felt that was cool and fun and engaging. And I thought, oh, okay, so maybe I can just try and be myself and say the things that I care about. And you know, with the rest of my knowledge and experience in talking to people, making sure that my content is suitable for someone that might not be as technical in something as I am, that really opened up a lot of different things. You know, thanks to Twitter, I interviewed a NASA scientist on the day of the launch of the Mars mission last year with and it went on YouTube. I went on the radio a few times. There's just so much that can happen if you open yourself up to all these different possibilities. You can speak to people wherever they are and meet them where they are. There was a remark that was mentioning about, you know, there's different social media and young people might be more a certain social media network than another one. Absolutely. Instagram is actually now becoming, you know, upper in age. So it's always important, you know, to keep yourself up to date and look at the audience breakdown, you know, look at those demographics breakdowns. But also I would suggest start from something, okay? Find your feet. It's absolutely fine. Like I have tried Instagram, but then I find I'm just not that consistent at producing pictures. I'm better at writing down stuff. My brain just works that way. So I mostly write on Twitter. Does that mean I reach a certain kind of audience? Yes. Does it mean it's a bad thing? No. I am still reaching someone, and I'm still reaching someone with, you know, a relevant audience, with a relevant interest, but less knowledge that I have on a certain topic. So that's still helpful. Then as you go on, you can explore more things. I should maybe try to come back to Instagram. I should try my hand at TikTok. Doesn't mean I have to. This is about trying something else. And, you know, as part of my work, I wanted to mention as a last point, I also help people becoming better communicators. And communicators come in all shapes and sizes. I help people who are really extroverted becoming better communicators, and I help people who are really introverted becoming better communicators. And I want to say one thing, communication is a skill, okay? Actually, if you're extroverted, that can sometimes work at your disadvantage because you're too confident, because you think you know everything already. You think you're going to be already ahead of the game because you feel more predisposed to chatting to one another. And that's good, but it's a skill. So actually, feeling like you always have something to learn is what gives you the real advantage. Always being ready to re-examine yourself. So it's good to be an extrovert, but it's definitely not the end game. I have seen amazing people who feel like they're more introverted doing great work. And also, the very last thing I'm going to touch on now is that there's a lot of different ways of doing public engagement that don't actually involve you speaking to another person. You could be surprised. But, you know, the phrase public engagement doesn't mean that everything you do is going to have 500 people in the same room. That's actually absolutely not true. I've done some of those things, and I've done things when I was alone in my room, writing grant proposals for someone else to use that money and do public engagement, you know, like actually doing the stuff in the room with the people. Was I not doing public engagement? No, I was enabling someone else that was doing it. So there's plenty of different ways to do this, and your personality is not a type, how you feel about it is not necessarily an obstacle.
All right, thank you, all the panelists. So just to clarify how to submit questions on the Padlet board, there is a pink button on the bottom right of the board that has a plus sign. You can click on that one and it will open a box, and then you can just type your comments or questions there. And it will post as soon as you step out of the box, your post will be there. But I wanted to, so one point that I think absolutely every single panelist brought on was about diversity and inclusion, and that is a very important topic that I wanted to bring on, is on the use of these different medias, because as Kristen mentioned and Jess also mentioned, there are classical things that we consider as social media outlets, but we can think more broadly about what those are. I know that talking about diversity, I've just finished reading a book about beamlines and lifetimes, and it's about the world of particle physics as it was in the 70s and 80s. And I was reading this book, my background is in particle physics, and I was like, oh my God, this is not that different than how I was. And then, realizing that culture then might be transmitted in a different way. But today we have different outlets, such as like social media, to, push those boundaries and those cultural boundaries that are created within groups. So I want to hear a bit about, your own experience, the panelists, of how you're, apart from having presence in those, which is already a huge step into breaking those boundaries, how other ways can we do to push those cultural kind of labels, or I don't know how to put the right name on it, that through these different social medias ways. And I appreciate that there's been many ways of doing it that is not necessarily engaging directly with the person. So I don't know who wants to comment on that first. Jess.
I might just jump in to say that my favorite thing to do on social media and generally in life is to amplify other people's stories. So whether that's through writing their biographies on Wikipedia, if they fulfill Wikipedia's archaic notability criteria, or if that's telling their stories when you go out and do in-person outreach, or if that's amplifying the stories of things like Black in Astro and Black in Physics and all of these extraordinary communities that are coming online. And really, I owe so much to those communities in the past year, because they've opened my eyes as a scientist to the experiences other people are facing. But also, it's really made me think about storytelling and that narrative and who we put forward and platform. And I think whether you are a researcher just starting out on your kind of public engagement journey on social media, or if you're the head of a lab who has quite a sizable audience, or if you're a journal editor, or if you're someone who runs something in a professional society, looking at the content that's being created by people, some of whom are on this panel, and sharing that more broadly and more widely is a really great way to get in. You read an article by Jessica or something like that, and you share it and you tweet about it. And I think that's it's my favorite aspect of social media, is really using that platform that you have, no matter how big it is, to speak about how brilliant other people are. And so I think that's a really easy in for people who want to kind of get into a social media space, and it introduces you to a community, it introduces you to a diverse community of people who are also fighting for a more equal world in physics. So that was just my first immediate thought when you started talking.
I'll jump in very quickly with an initiative that we're actually just finalizing now. So I am part of a group that is called Tiger in STEM, and I have met in person maybe just one person before, but we came together on social media, again, based on this common interest in science and in equity. And we decided, let's apply for money and let's do a webinar series together. And we've done 5 webinars last year in physics and this year in chemistry. And we called lots of different people. We opened our call to lots of different people to come and speak to our seminar. So we send that call to lots of departments in the UK that have a chemistry degree. And we got undergraduate speakers, and we got more people at a more advanced career stage. And we use social media to do that, to come together, to share ideas, to find people with the right expertise to do that. We upskilled the early career people. We provided them with a training session on how to communicate science more effectively. We had, everything was on Zoom. The talks are on YouTube. So if you want, you can actually, go on your YouTube page and look for them. I'm going to post a link to the channel later on in the chat. And that's something that you can do on social media. You can come up with initiatives to showcase diverse work, or if you get on social media and if you want to showcase your work through one of those things, if you look for them, they are there, and they are there because people like us are making them happen. So you can amplify other people's work, like Jess was saying, just by, with a little share. That's really, really easy. That's level 1. And also you can get involved in all of these initiatives. They're happening everywhere. There's so many of them, and some of them are absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Black in Astro, Black in Physics have been quoted, but Geolatinas is another great one as well.
Actually, yeah, I wanted to ask Caprice and Jessica about how they're doing that through the movement of Black in Physics, Black in Astro, Black in Neuro. I mean, and goes on, and it has such a good like momentum, that how can others replicate similar movements? Caprice?
I would just say, like, okay, first I would say, like, to follow all of these accounts, like Black in Astro, Black in Neuro, Black Botanist Week. Like, there's so many of them. You can think about it, they've probably made one. There's Black in Swimming Week is happening right now. So there's like so many, Black in X Network. And so I don't know, there's like a Slack channel with different members of the Black in X movements, and someone's like, is there a Black in like nanotechnology or whatever? And they're like, I don't know. That was like, make one, like make a, like, if you're interested in making it, just like make it, start off like we all like, we support each other. And I try to like gas people up as much as I can, like on Twitter, like, Black in Anatomy and like Black in Cardio, like all these things. So like, just if you're interested in it, to like found it. I've seen like Latinx, like in Kim, and there's Geo Latinas, like there's all like these like movements and stuff. So I say, if you're just like interested in it, to like make it start, you can start by making like a Twitter account or an Instagram account, or like you don't have to have a full blown out thing yet. Those things come with time. We're all still kind of like these grassroots organizations, but build it and connect with like other people, because the support system, we're trying to like build it and like have that type of thing. That's just kind of like my little 2 cents about it. I get so excited about it because I'm so happy to like see these like organizations. I wish I had something like this when I was like in undergrad and stuff. It would have been so helpful. So I don't know if Jessica wants to say anything about it or anything.
Yeah, I think these Black in X movements and organizations have been so impactful and so engaging because of the principles that they were created on. We weren't looking for or trying to appeal to the white gaze. We were trying to find us, and we were trying to build community among us, and we were trying to support us. And I think that's why these are so empowering and impactful, because we flipped the script, I think, on what science communication and community engagement looks like. We've re-evaluated what is our priority, and we've put and centered our communities in the way we communicate our science. I mean, just Caprice's statements right before, she said we gas each other up. And that is, you know, Black Twitter vernacular that may not be as comfortable or as known in the white, you know, language or sphere. And we have created culturally engaging content where we are not code switching anymore. Like, we're living authentically, and we're using the language that we know we understand, right? And we are challenging other people to catch up and to keep up. And yeah, I think that's why these movements are so important. And you can see that through the Black and X weeks, where we use images of Beyonce and Rihanna as ways to communicate our science, or as ways to show, you know, the different textbooks that we've used to become expert in our fields, right? We are engaging with MC Hammer as he helps us amplify, you know, the work that we're doing. And then you have Raven, the science maven, who infuses the work that she does in culturally relevant Black music and Black art. And I think that's what really drives the work that I'm doing in Black in Physics. And that's what gives me so much hope in the future, for the future, because of this like unapologetic FU type, you know, I guess, feeling that we're having with regards to how we're communicating our science and who we're doing it for.
So there's something that have been said in different ways, right, about these authenticity and, you know, being true to yourself and bringing your own culture forward. And that's something I struggle a little bit with social media, into making whether I need to put a kind of like a boundary between me, the scientist, and me, the person, and that, you know, whether I should have like a professional account and a personal account type of thing. And then, you know, how does that impact on how you build your audience? So, Kristen, I saw you nodding, and I want to see what.
I mean, I think that, you know, just as you are simultaneously, you know, a person and a professional, right? I think that your social media space should reflect that, and it should reflect, you know, the combination of the research that you're proud of and, you know, the advocacy that you support, and all of that is wrapped into you as a person. So why not bring it to the social space? I mean, that's just my opinion. I think other people probably have more valuable perspectives on this, as, you know, scientists who do have conflict, you know, who are showing themselves super authentically in the social sphere.
Yeah, go ahead, Caprice.
No, go ahead, Jessica.
Yeah.
And Priestlet afterward. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I agree with Kristen that it's very difficult to try and leave yourself at home when you go to work. It becomes even more difficult when you're Black or when you're a woman to leave that part of yourself at home. And there are, I think, coping mechanisms and survival skills that we in the Black community have learned. And, you know, one of them is code switching, but we're seeing a movement now where when no longer focused on the how comfortable our colleagues are, as we are essentially living uncomfortable lives moving through society. So I think, I don't know, I think it's important, especially for me, to be very authentic and vulnerable on my social media platforms. But I do want to caveat that that comes with inherent risk. And you're putting essentially a target on your back for folks that don't agree with the way you're communicating, or for folks that don't feel like you should be infusing yourself into, you know, an objective space. But I've lived on the other end of the spectrum, where I had a very, very tight line between my professional self and my personal self. And it was, you know, during a time where I was keeping the fact that I was a lesbian from my colleagues. And it's not a way to live. It was a very difficult time. It put my relationship in jeopardy. Sorry, I don't know why I'm getting emotional. But yeah, it was after that experience that I made an intentional choice to not live in the closet anymore. Sorry guys.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's incredible. I feel privileged for being here in this moment that you're sharing this. So thank you very much. Caprice, do you have some comments?
Yeah, well, I just want to say thank you, Jessica, for sharing that. Like, it's kind of like I kind of joked on Twitter, like, because I'm always like, sometimes I'll like call like aspects of like astronomy and like different things out like on Twitter, but it's kind of like I don't get to like pick and choose like what day like I'm Black, like for example, like I'm Black every day, which I'm proud of. And so, you know, I realized I was like, oh, like, do I need to make, like, I was like, do I need to make a professional Twitter? But I was like, this is me, this is who I am. And so like, you're either gonna like take me for like everything that I am, or like, you're either not. Like, it's kind of like one of those things, but as Jessica said, like that does come with like a risk. And I joked that I was like, you know, if a tweet that I made or something about like astronomy needs to do better, if that was gonna be the thing that's not gonna get me, like, y'all weren't gonna hire me anyway, like type of thing. So like letting that stop me from, you know, being like my authentic self, like using AAVE like on like, you know, Twitter, and like my gifts and like all this stuff is kind of like I am who I am, and I want people to see, you know, that you can like be like your like authentic self like on social media like platforms. And so also that way, like, you're not surprised if you like see me in person or something. Like, I'm a lot quieter in person, but like, you're not surprised to see you in person, like, who are you, like, type of thing. So I think it's important to bring your whole self to like spaces like that. But I do recognize that that comes with like an inherent risk, because like not everybody is comfortable with that. But it's like, you know, that's their stuff. You know, my stuff is like bringing my authentic self to like who I am to everything. I can't worry about like their stuff. When a friend, Nicole, was telling me about my stuff versus their stuff type of thing, then I try to remember that. So, but yeah, I think it's important to like bring like who I am to these spaces, because I'm not gonna stop being Black any day. Like now, like, you know, it is what, you know, I love being Black, and that's just, you know, it's how I am and type of thing. So
Can I jump in? Is that okay? I completely echo everything everyone's just said, but I also, for people in the audience who don't want to be that on social media, that's okay too. I think you can use social media really effectively as a scientist for almost all of those reasons that Kristen listed in her slides, you know, to engage with policymakers, to find jobs, to better connect with journal editors, all those different things that are really good for furthering your scientific career. And if you're not okay being vulnerable or being public online, that's fine. You can do it for that. And scientists and physicists do that really, really effectively. I think that the kind of true, honest public engagement happens when you are yourself. And we've seen the kind of power of that just in the last few minutes. But I think, you don't have to do that. You can just use it to make a great video relaying in a jargon-free way your paper, or you can use it to advertise a job going in your lab or to amplify someone else's story. And kind of remember that you can use science communication and social media as a scientist. You can use it as you as a person. Public engagement is probably more powerful when you're yourself. I just wanted to add that, because I think if I was in the audience, I might be kind of terrified that I have to go on and tell all my family secrets to be able to get any audience. And you don't have to do that at all. You can just use it to speak about science and think of creative ways to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a very good point. But I think that what some of the panelists were trying to express is that in order to help break those, stereotypes or, cultural barriers that exist, it is important sometimes to also bring our authentic self in front. So, but one thing that, segued on that, we have mentioned that there are different platforms that we can use. And, I think that the audience change depending on the platform. And also, I wonder if, there are some platforms that are more appropriate for sharing some type of content versus others. And as a science communicator, I think that, it was mentioned that maybe it's good to focus on one that you feel more comfortable with and take on with that. Or is that we should be aware of every other platform that exists and maybe try to juggle all of those. So
can I take this one?
Yes.
So when you start doing science communication a little bit more, there's this question that you start asking yourself a lot. What am I trying to accomplish here? So, in science, when we do our experiment, we know what we want to measure. So we choose the better instrument for it, right? We choose how to do the fit. We choose what's the best journal to submit that work to. We do all of this, right? And in communication, it's a very similar exercise. So if you want to specifically reach 12-year-olds, you won't do that on LinkedIn. You just won't do that because that's not the core audience that LinkedIn has. If you want to start talking about your science and linking with professionals, Twitter is a good place to try your hand at that. So it's important to keep in mind your purpose. What is your purpose? And once you know what your purpose is, you're going to look at all these different platforms and your own skill set and choose where you want to do it. What is the message that you're going to convey? What is the way that you want to convey that message? And it's going to be a work in progress. I insist on this point a lot. You always have to ask yourself those questions, and you always have to take a step back and say, okay, am I doing everything right? Am I becoming self-complacent? Or, some days you just keep going, you just keep existing because that's what you can do. That's what your mind can support you in doing. And that's absolutely fine. It's about finding a space that you can work in that allows you to reach the audience that you intended to reach. And every once in a while, you look back at what you've done and you're like, did I do what I wanted to do? And the answer can be yes. Excellent. Keep going. it can be also no, and that's fine, because communication is like science. You just keep trying. A negative result is still a result. You've tried something and it didn't work that well. We're human. I wasn't born knowing how to do all the things that I know how to do today. So you give it a go. You try and you see how it goes, and you can chat to someone else who you admire. The other great thing, after hearing those amazing stories of vulnerability, the thing I really felt compelled in sharing is, once you get on social media and you talk about the things that you want to talk about, we talk about social media bubbles. What are they? It essentially, you tend to attract people that have a similar interest to you, and in science communication, that's thought to be a bad thing, because you want to reach a new audience, which is fair. It's a fair criticism. It can be fairly hard to reach someone who is not already interested in science when you share on social media. But I can say that the sense of community that I have today about science, the sense of community I have today being a person that cares about equity and about advancing everyone's path, the community I found being asexual, I have never met a person knowing that they were asexual. And now I know a lot, because now I'm on Twitter and I can attract those people with similar interests as myself. And those people will look after you. Whenever something happens and I see someone, of the people that I follow posting that, they are receiving harassment and they're not sure how to deal with something or whatever else, I'll go and support them. And when I am struggling, people will check on me. Like, sometimes maybe I just don't post for a few days and someone will message me, "Hey, how are you doing?" And that means a lot, because when you choose to share, your vulnerability, you will find your people. Your people will be attracted to you. There's two forces that you can't screen in nature. One is gravity, and the other one is passion and enthusiasm. You can't shield yourself from that. People will gravitate towards you because you care, because you're showing that you care. So, I really, really wanted to drive this point home, that it's not going to be easy, and it's absolutely fine to take breaks and to set your boundaries on what you want to share, when you want to share it. But there will be people that have your back, okay? And I am one of them. Usually I really try to hype other people up as much as I can, and to say, "Hey, I think you're awesome and I'm here for you." And there's lots of people like this. So this is a great thing about social media.
So one question that it was asked a little bit ago from the audience, and it kind of relates to that, is, Jessica also comment on building community through these movements, is that, it doesn't matter how many likes or retweets do we get, are we, there are this, what is it called? A term that I learned not too long ago, which is like clickbait, right? That, the type of content that we are putting out is to attract those like clicks and then get more likes. And then, I think that in part that forms bubbles. And some of those bubbles can be of concerns, as another person in the audience pointed out. So how do we make sure that, yes, we're building community, but at the same time, we might not be we're trying to be authentic. So we're thinking of should we create some of those contents that are meant to be clickbait? And how do we check ourselves that we're not just within a bubble that it might make us lose track of other things that are out there. Kristen, you want to comment on that one?
Ooh, that's a tricky one, for sure. I will say, I mean, you know, I think Claudia talked about this earlier, right? The idea of kind of analyzing your goals for being in the social space, right? Are they personal? Are you looking for your own, you know, network for you know, some network building among your peers? If so, then, you know, who cares how many posts, how many likes, how many times your tweet's been seen, right? It's for you. If you're going after, you know, public engagement kinds of goals, right? I'm using this for my broader impacts in my grant, or something like that, you know, then you might be more concerned about, oh gosh, how do I get those metrics up? But I just want to remind you all, like, even as, you know, sort of the communications professional on this panel, like that's my day job, like I'm not a scientist. You know, we struggle with this too, right? Sometimes I have a post that has 200, 300 views. And sometimes I have a post that, you know, has thousands. And so it's everything in the social media sphere is about kind of recalibrating all the time. What new network do I want to pursue to reach my goals? If your goals are personal, maybe you just want to stay where you are and maintain, you know, a following that builds community. If you want to reach big audiences, you know, maybe you want to move to, you know, a YouTube space or build in, you know, growing networks. Like, you know, someone posted in the conversation, the Q&A session about TikTok. I think TikTok is ripe for all of you, right? Hop on TikTok and create some social content about science. There's lots of stuff going on there, not a lot of science. And TikTok could use all of you. So I think, you know, it's just about your goals, and don't feel badly if, you know, your post is only getting 30 people. That's, you know, that it just, sometimes my posts only get 30 people too, right? And you know, this is my job, my career. I've been doing it for 20 years. I'm not sure if that really answered your question perfectly, Claudia, but that's my 2 cents about the whole thing.
Sure. And there is something very true that you mentioned, right? That is like, there's not enough science in TikTok. And we were just talking about Raven, and one of the things that she posted in her social media, I think it was today, it was that she had a conversation with Mark Zuckerberg, and she said, there's not enough science in Facebook. So I think that, you know, it's just a matter of, even if it's a clickbait or not, or is it personal, or is in our bubble, at least I think that I truly believe that by normalizing science, the only way is putting it more out there so that we can consume it more, that we are exposed to it more, so that it just became a normal thing.
I do want to say something just about the term clickbait, just because I think that is where the it's, you know, if you're creating something like with the goal of clicks and you know, it really like moves into that clickbait space, then it's probably not really authentic, and you're not necessarily coming at it from the right perspective, right? I mean, we're trying to make our content viral and find an audience, but I think that clickbait definitely is where something turns into some, you know, something much more negative, right? And you're really like not even giving people what you told them you would give them, with the pure goal of getting them to click on something. And I think that is really kind of irresponsible. So, you know, just as a practice, let's just agree that the science communication space is one space where at least those of us that are doing it, you know, ethically and with the right goals, let's avoid clickbait, right? Can we agree?
Can I jump in? So I think there's 2 other examples I'd bring in as amazing physicists who've like curated massive audiences by being totally authentic, and that's Diana Cowan and her channel at The Physics Girl, who has been doing this over on YouTube for years now. And you know, she's big name amongst the APS. She's really transformative, but almost every physics teacher I've interacted with has used her videos in some capacity. So having those easy, accessible, super fun, her enthusiasm and personality is in every single second of those clips. Having those has transformed the physics education of millions, if not billions, of young people all over the world. So really YouTube is a really important platform, and I think she's led the way in a really, really brilliant way. And the other one is Katie Mack, who has been killing it on Twitter for years and years and has accumulated 300, if not 400,000 followers. She's now written, a best-selling New York Times book. And this is someone who started on Twitter as a graduate student, as far as I know, has since kind of navigated her academic career path relatively publicly on Twitter about applying for jobs and moving all over the world, and is now an assistant professor. But I think you have kind of two examples of people who've been doing this really creatively for a really long time and have grown completely honestly massive audiences. So I do think that there's power to it, and you can, if you share your story, you share it honestly, and you use that creativity. And whenever I'm speaking to physicists about kind of upping their social media game or thinking about using social media, I point to the initiatives that we've spoken about so far, to all the Black and X movements, because I find them so inspiring, but also to Katie and to Diana, because they have been nailing this for so long.
And one important point about Diana that I know is that she makes sure that her writers for her show come from very diverse backgrounds, so that she includes, that element of how to communicate with different people, because, we don't know how to communicate to everyone. We don't know even the slang of how to communicate with many different people. So I know that she takes a lot of care on bringing into different writers from different backgrounds to help her develop her shows. One thing that I also wanted to mention here, and it was connected to a comment that was posted on the Blackboard, is that some of the times the images that we put out might be misconstrued. Social media or, written language can come across sometimes as misinterpreted, and as women say, like, we can all have negative experience. So person in the audience, right? Black men who are scientists have to be wise about their appearance on social media, because they are still fear in the minds of the population, the general population. And I think that, I feel that other people from other backgrounds might have not exactly the same, but other type of how they curate, how they appear in social media because of particular stereotypes, or how are they perceived. How can we speak about that? Because I think that one of the things that we were trying to discuss earlier is, being authentic, being presenting, being vulnerable, and if we try to maybe cater to that perception, would that actually, I don't know exactly how can we navigate this. I've experienced particularly like being bullied on social media, which has like, now I am super scared of how do I say things. And sometimes that, takes me like, oh, I write and rewrite things many times before I actually decided to post it or not post it at all. And I know that that is possibly a way that other people experience as when we're trying to be authentic, and then, maybe being more sterile and just putting science content, which sometimes can be very controversial too, if we talk about climate change or energy fusion. Now, vaccine hesitancy, which has been, a thing that we've been living for the past, I don't know, seems like eons. So how can we talk about those things? Jessica, do you want to mention something?
Yeah, I think I mean, y'all know, I live my authentic self unapologetically. But I think it comes down to that for me, like, what community are you trying to engage with? And you tailor your content to the community that you want to engage with or be a part of. yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that. Yeah, I mean, if somebody doesn't like what I'm saying, or what I'm putting out there, they're not the people that I want to reach.
Claudia and then Caprice.
Can I add something? So I was mentioning something earlier about drawing boundaries. And this is really important. If you're experiencing this kind of bullying from people online, and we know it will be more likely, disproportionately more likely to happen if you are Black, if you're disabled, if you are openly LGBTQIA+, if you're a woman, we know that this tends to attract online abuse. Draw boundaries. Like, you don't owe your presence to anyone. If you decide to put yourself out there, that's great and it's absolutely commendable, but you don't owe science to diversify it, if that makes sense. Science, social media platforms, all these spaces have to become welcoming and accepting of people from all walks of life. And that is not your job. You are giving a gift. You are not, it should never be something that makes you exposed and vulnerable and hurt. If that happens, when that happens, that is a systematic problem, is not something that should be on your shoulders to solve. Okay, want to be very, very clear about this. And the real problem is that Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all these platforms lack accountability. I want to mention this because people were really, really happy about TikTok. Yes, but are you aware maybe of the fact that TikTok has censored systematically, deplatformed Black, disabled creators or creators with different body shapes? And you know why? In their opinion, because they were trying to shield them from harassment, and that's a cop-out. I'm going to be very deliberate here. It's a cop-out. In order to avoid harassment, you have to deal with harassment. You have to make sure that those people get banned from the platform. You have to make sure that those actions are reported to the authorities. Social media are a really, really hard area to navigate, but that's why we need more accountability. Okay, if it comes down to minoritized content creators being driven away from that space, that's a reflection of a wider systematic issue. I go online and I receive a lot of love from the people I interact with, but I've received some pretty nasty stuff that I won't go into any sort of detail. And on those days, I close it. I just don't deal with it because I am the most important person when it comes to my social media feed. I am the person I am doing that for. Before however many followers I may have, before changing the world through putting myself out there, it's great and it's important, but it's not a duty. You don't owe it to anyone.
Caprice.
Yeah, I guess I'll say a couple of things. Like, I really agree with what Claudia said. Like, you kind of have to protect your peace on these social media things. Like when you're post like things like engage people. Like people have I found on like Twitter, like people, they have a habit of not liking or posting like nasty things when you do bring your authentic like self like to these spaces. Like there was a whole, I think last year there was a lot of Black scientists and educators. It was like this hashtag Black in the Ivory, and we were all like posting about like our experiences, and like the amount of people that like called me a liar, like some nasty racial slur, because I was like, I'm just telling you like what happened to me, and like you're mad about it. So it's kind of like I choose not to like engage with that type of content, but like communicating science, like for me, is not just like, oh, here's this like cool paper I have. It's like science isn't done in a bubble, like it's done by scientists and like who have these things. So it's like part of communicating science for me is like communicating like my lived experience that comes with like being like in these spaces, and like people like when it's all cutesy, you know, when it gives, you know, people like, we smell like type of thing. But like when you're posting about like, you know, some of like the real stuff that you've like experienced as part of like any identity that you like operate an axis in, like, you know, some people, they want to push back on that. And it's like, you know, that's your stuff. Like, you know, you'll have to come to terms with that. Like, I can't, it's like, hey, like no one's paying me enough to like change your mind. Like, I don't get paid for that. So it's like kind of like, you know, that type of thing. So there's certain things where I like try to like protect my peace. Also, my block hand is strong on Twitter and like all this stuff. Like, I will block you in a minute. So, you know, it's just kind of like my thoughts about that kind of topic and like subject things. Like the main priority for me is like protecting like my peace. Like honestly, I was like, I'm not gonna sit here and like argue too much about this random person on Twitter. Like it's kind of like that type of like thing, because I'm gonna be sitting here mad and they're just gonna be like, aha, I got her, like type of thing, you know, like people are just kind of nasty. So yes, the block button is your best friend. So that's just kind of like my kind of 2 cents about it. I don't know if I really answered the question, but that's just what was on my mind as regards to what other people said.
Yeah, what I heard was, you know, like picking your battles in the social sphere, right? Because like people will bring you battles. They will bring them to your doorstep because, you know, as was shared by an earlier panelist, right? The accountability in the social sphere is just, it's, you know, it's not the same. People will say things on social that they would never say if they had to walk up to you at a public event and say it, right? And we all know that. We've all seen it. You know, and I think deciding when to kind of correct and when to combat and when to just say like, this is ridiculous. I mean, something much lighter. This is not about like, you know, exhibiting your authentic self in the social sphere. You know, I'm more representing like you know, like a professional account today. And so here in our little community, we're headquartered at Florida State University in Tallahassee, Florida. And there's like this favorite urban legend in Tallahassee about how the Mag Lab controls the weather. And so the amount, I'm like, I don't know where it started, right? We create magnetic fields in like really small spaces, as most of you understand. But people just have this, you know, they look at radar pictures and they say, oh gosh, I can see these storms broke up right as they were coming around Tallahassee, right? And so I spend probably half of my time on social just, you know, dispelling this like, you know, and it's, again, it's completely different than what the other panelists have shared, where it's very personal and it's very direct, right? But like that's one that I feel particularly called to, you know, just try to correct from our community's perspective. You know, it's a good opportunity and an entry point to say, hey, wait a minute, actually, like that is not right. Let me tell you why. So, you know, sometimes the misinformation and that can be its own opportunity if it's not being directed at you personally and horribly, as has been kind of shared. But just
right. And actually,
can I? Oh
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Can I actually?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Jump in on that. Yeah. So I like the juxtaposition of the personal and the professional, the conversations that we're having here, and I just want to add, I guess, a third, and the reason why I have a very focused eye on the communities that I come from is what I've seen is not misinformation, but just not even engaging with this community, right? With my community. And I think that's also important, like, to recognize, is that, you know, in the science communication and the community engagement sphere, we're not supposed to be scientists. We're not supposed to be interested in science. So unfortunately, we are forgotten in the conversation. And you see that, speaking of, in COVID. and in the conversations around how, to mitigate, how to deal with the vaccines, our community got left out, unfortunately. So then when you are now having to deal with this inherent distrust on the vaccines, I mean, to me, it makes complete sense. And there's historical reasonings behind why our community would be very, honestly, I'm a scientist and I was hesitant to get the vaccine until, other people did it, and I was looking at the data to make sure that they weren't really bad symptoms with it. But I mean, even when you look at the types of people that they test these vaccines on, there are, gaps in the communities that they're doing these human tests on. So yeah, I think that's also just important to talk about. Not only is it misinformation, but it's just lack of information that you can address. And in having a very, I would say, niche community that I am engaging with, it brings on more opportunities to continue that engagement. So I don't really focus on clicks or how many retweets I get. I focus more on the continued stable engagement of the community that I'm making content for. And I've seen, I've seen the fruits. I'm bearing the fruits of that labor. And one of the opportunities that I've gotten is actually to do videos, preconception videos for McGraw-Hill that are focused on putting me in front of students so that they can see that I am a physicist, that this is what a physicist does, and these are the scientific concepts that I'm an expert in, and that I can also make these concepts accessible to the kids, to middle school, to high schoolers. Anyways, I'm done talking.
So I wanted to bring two more things that I wanted to ask, and it was about, you've mentioned already misinformation and the pandemic and the use of social media, and whether we as physicists or, scientists in general should engage in those conversations in social media. I know that it's hard. I know that from my point of view, I tried to convince my dad and I didn't win that battle. And it was actually peer pressure that did it. So I wanted to know, Jess, you posed a really good discussion on that on the chat. If you have any thoughts about how we scientists should engage about talking about misinformation and combating misinformation or COVID in general in the social media spaces.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we should defer to epidemiologists and public health doctors and people developing vaccines, because there was this kind of car crash of popular science communicators trying to speak effectively about issues they didn't quite understand. I'm sure that you will remember, especially those who use Twitter a lot, but a lot of people who have relatively big followings on social media getting it wrong at the beginning. And that really increased the amount of mistrust. And I think that what we need to do first is defer to people who do have the expertise. But then ultimately, and obviously I don't have all the answers, it's that you meet people where they're at. They're scared. They're not getting this because they're malicious, evil people. They're not doing this because they want to keep the pandemic going, or they want case numbers to rise, or they want to, get to a certain level of the Greek alphabet for the next variant. They're doing it because they're frightened. And I think, as with other types of social media, you go to people where they are and you provide them with the information that would have convinced you, and you say, I'm a PhD holding physicist and I was nervous too, I hate this too, I want to get out of this too, and obviously our capacity of reaching people will differ, and it will differ by scenario and different by person. And maybe your voice isn't the right voice. Maybe you do defer to a Black public health physician. Maybe you do say, oh no, you need to go and listen to this person from this historically marginalized group, or this person who's religious and also had concerns about it breaking different conditions that they're not happy with. And I think you join those dots together. I've been really too nervous to take the tube during the pandemic to get to the lab. So I've taken Ubers and walked really long ways to be able to get in. And I've had so many good conversations with Uber drivers who are so nervous to get it. And then you say, you know what, this isn't about you. This is about other people. And this is about protecting your community and your family. And it's kind of like, it's the first time someone said it to them like that. You know, it's finding that narrative that will work for a particular audience. And there's so many fantastic resources. I put a link in the chat to one that is run by a bunch of women public health doctors and physicians, and they have this kind of Q&A where you can put your kind of silliest and deepest, darkest questions around COVID, and they'll come up with a good way to answer it. There's a big movement on TikTok of vaccine developers and scientists. Kizzy Corbett, who is the Black woman virologist who developed the Moderna vaccine, she's incredibly good on Twitter at talking about these different issues. And I think you find that audience and you take it to the people you find those experts and you take it to the people who need it. But there's definitely not a kind of this will always work answer. It's just that we incrementally push people towards getting to finding it out themselves, because that's what we really need to do. And yeah, I strongly believe that as physicists, we have a certain reach, but then we should send people to where people really, really are experts, so they can go a little bit deeper on the questions to what we can give, because there's nothing worse than someone who is quite clearly punching above their weight in their explanation and not really convincing people, because that will lose trust even more. So make sure that we find kind of trusted voices who are experts, but also understand the nuances of talking to people who are frightened. And I would just add, I think that science, and I've spoken for way too long, I'm sorry, but I think that science communication has come a really long way since we had the kind of MMR jab and the Wakefield scandal, which all took place about 100 meters from where I'm sitting right now, where scientists really didn't know how to communicate effectively. And we had a scientist going on air and talking about a vaccine and saying it was linked to autism when it certainly wasn't. And then all these scientists went on the radio and television and just gave the facts. And they gave them in a very dry way, and none of it was targeted at their audience, and none of it was really thinking about people coming from a place of fear. And then the people who were on the other side came on and did the whole emotional bit and said, you know, I'm worried about my child, I'm worried about them developing these different kinds of conditions. And the emotions always win. So we can't completely ignore emotion and put fact in place. So I would look at and learn from that, but rest assured that science communication, as you can see from this great panel, has moved on a lot since then. But go from not a place of judgment, go from a place where you realize they're frightened and we're also bloody frightened, right? So we all need to kind of come together to try and fix this.
I just wanted to add a thing. Jess made a lot of great points. What to do if you see that the other person is extremely aggressive, because I think that deserves a quick mention too. You know, most people have good reasons, you know, to be vaccine hesitant, but there are also people who are spreading this kind of misinformation in a malicious way. Okay, so I'm thinking of those, you know, influencers of malicious misinformation. I'm not thinking here of communities that have been provided with access to meaningful sources and with communication that would meet them where they were at. And these people exist, they are out there. It's important to remember something that Jess was mentioning earlier, that you're not necessarily going to change people's minds with facts. This has been studied. A lot of Jess, I'm going to look at the link that you shared later, but these people have a very large audience and they will get a lot of following, and then those people will sort of come back to you and say, oh, but it's this, and that. It's quite hard to change someone's mind after they really buy into this kind of thing. But there's always someone watching. I had a confrontation. It wasn't about COVID, it was about climate change. I had someone that came to me with the intention of being confrontational, with the intention of giving me a gotcha moment about, I know more than you, you are a scientist, but I beat you, okay? I had that kind of conversation. There's always someone that could be watching how you react. Because in that moment, even though you're not a virologist, you are still wearing a sort of science hat. So to contribute to that trust, even though it's hard and you don't have to keep engaging if you don't want to, but replying with good sources, pointing people to correct information, that might not get those very radicalized people from their position, but there could be someone else reading that is trying to make up their mind. So by engaging as much as possible, by providing correct information, by saying, these emotions deserve to be analyzed and deserve to be dealt with, always on your terms, can be helpful to change the minds of, to get the people's minds more towards getting a vaccine when they're feeling more on the fence, okay? So it's always about who is your audience. Your audience might not necessarily be those that have decided they're completely against the vaccine, but you could reach someone that is just a little bit further away from that point. So it's a very complicated kind of process, but I think back of the exchange that I had I started, had I just scoffed and be like, oh, yeah, but of course climate change is real. I mean, it wouldn't have been a great behavior from myself professionally, but also all the other people, that would see me in that interaction would have thought, oh, that scientist was really dismissive of that person. That was really rude. We should listen to all different opinions and air them. And in that moment, you don't really have a lot of time to explain that, not all opinions deserve equal airtime. You can't really get all of that message home. But if you're in the right space for it, furthering a dialogue, still maintaining that, these are the facts and this is what we should do advised by the facts, can be helpful in getting those people sort of on your side, whatever that means. And if you don't feel like you want to have that conversation, don't have it, walk away. And again, defer to the people who are the experts in the scientific field and experts in communication. Okay, both of them, because someone can be a great scientist, but not a great communicator.
Yeah. All right, so in lieu of time, I just wanted to get the panelists to say their final snippets to your audience. And so I would say, Jess, do you want to start?
Yeah, just have fun with it. I mean, don't get too stressed out. Everything we've said is completely true. Tell your story, share your enthusiasm for science, be honest, be aware that people are watching you from all different kinds of backgrounds and from all different walks of life, and they'll listen to you and trust you because of where you work, because of your title, because of your credentials. But have fun, because it's not supposed to be some other aspect of your work that you feel really stressed that you have to create content for, or that you have to get back and put that post up, or you have to make sure to check it as soon as your experiment finishes. Use it while you've got beam time. Use it wherever you feel comfortable, and really make sure that it celebrates who you are as a scientist and lets you kind of further who you are as a scientist is really all I would say. If anyone wants any help, if anyone wants to learn how to edit Wikipedia, or if anyone wants to kind of to discuss writing kids books or that kind of thing, then feel free to reach out to me. I'm obviously on Twitter, but otherwise, yeah, just have fun. I mean, everyone on this panel is so insightful, and really take away from it what you can, but don't feel any pressure to be a particular person online.
Jessica?
Yeah, I think being cognizant of the audience that you're trying to reach is something that's always at the forefront of my brain. Yeah, if something else comes to me, I'll jump in, but I think that that's probably the most important aspect of my science communication. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Caprice?
Yeah, I think my thing is like to, you know, if you choose to be like, I'm gonna get on Twitter or like whatever platform you want to be engaged in, to just like, you know, like protect your peace, and you know, your peace, when your peace comes first, is one of those things, and to just make sure you're like engaging and like following you know, a lot of these like different movements and different types of things, and you know, engaging with these communities you may not, quote unquote, like normally might engage with online. It's a great opportunity to do that with like Latinx and Kim, like Black and X, like all these types of like things. You know, keep your block hand strong, and you know, turn off your DMs if that's something that brings you peace, and like, and then realize that like you don't have to do it if it's no longer serving you and it's no longer making you happy. Like, you don't have to be like on like Twitter. I'm like a real advocate of that. I feel like that kind of like maybe might defeat the purpose of the thing, but like if it's something that is bringing you like more stress and like anything, you can like log off or like do this like type of thing. Like that's always like an option, because protecting your peace and your mental health and your state of mind is very important. It's just, I'm a big advocate for that. So that's kind of just like my kind of final words. So, but thank you all.
Christine?
Yeah, I just want to amplify everything everyone has already shared. I mean, this is really smart stuff from people who know how to do this. And I just want to remind everybody, you know, even the experts in social media, like don't know what they're doing, right? We're all just figuring this out together. And this is such an evolving landscape, but it's such an opportunity, right, to connect with audience and provide those deeper insights that you can share in that space. So I just invite all of you to whatever network you're interested in, if there's any way, and also as the kind of weirdo in the group, right, the non-scientist who represents sort of an institution, I also want to encourage you all, like, if you're interested in you know, starting to play in this space, but you're like, I don't know if I want my whole account, or I have an account, but like I cannot content create the way a lot of content creators do, you know, find the me at your university, at your lab, at whatever lab you're a user of, right? I would love to tell stories of those of you who come to the Mag Lab and use, you know, big magnets, or even if you don't come to the Mag Lab, if you're using a big magnet, let me know. We'll tell your story. And so don't be afraid to kind of find the people like me who can help, you know, share the load with you a little bit in the social sphere and in the whole communication sphere as well.
And Claudia?
Again, coming last after all of this is, you know, lots of important and smart stuff has been said, which I agree with. Don't chase for going viral for two reasons. Because people will spot that you're going for that. And also it's really hard to predict what will actually grow very quickly. It's very, very random. But also because long-term, it will impact your self-esteem. And that's not what you're there for. You're there to share your science if you want. You're there to share something about yourself if that's what you want. You're there to help combating stereotypes about, you know, what does a scientist do in the lab, or what does a scientist look like? You know, that's what you're there for. Consistency pays off long term a lot more than a good tweet. Okay, you might have a tweet that gets 150,000 likes and whatever, however many retweets, and not have a community. Okay, or you could go viral every week on Instagram and not reach anyone in a meaningful way. You could have a ton of followers and spread bad messages. Okay, that's not what you want to do. I mean, this is not what I want to do. I don't think anyone on this panel or in this call this thought has ever crossed their mind. Things that are born out of grassroots spirit are great, even if they don't have 100,000 followers. The amount of reach on social media doesn't determine how good or bad your work is. Okay, this is really important to remember, to keep yourself grounded and keep in mind that sense of purpose that you have. Keep in mind who is your audience. Keep in mind what is your message. And you may get a lot of followers, you may not. That's secondary. Your purpose is what matters. Okay, that's why you're there. And once you find your people, cheer them on, support them when they need you, and they will be there for you. Like, honestly, this sense of community is one of the most powerful things. And if you ever want to get in touch with me to discuss any of the points that I've touched on today, I'd be always more than happy to.
All right. Thank you to all the speakers. As I once read from a science communicator in Ireland, he's like, even if you are just preaching to the choir, that you are still doing science communication, because not everyone is an expert on everything, and we're all learning all the time. So with that, I wanted to first thank the speakers and the panelists. I think that, you know, we might be expecting that, like, how can I get millions of tweets and what can I create specific designs to do that? But I think the intention of this talk was more to, how can we make science more diverse using this powerful tool as it is social media? And also, as other speakers have mentioned, I also offer, you know, Physics Central as a space for, if people wants to, you know, get their word out about what cool stuff are they doing, or, you know, what program do they run. You know, we have a blog that we publish. We also have different social media outlets that are there for you, so you can get in touch with public engagement at APS, and, you know, we can work with you on that. So with that, I will let you all go, and thank you so much again, and I hope to see you all at some point.
Thanks so much for chairing so well, Claudia.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.